Welcome to the Ready, Set, Click podcast, where we talk digital marketing strategies. Grab a coffee or something a little stronger and settle in for this episode.
Hello and welcome to the Ready, Set, Click podcast. I'm your host, Paul Kahn. I'm joined today by our founder and co-CEO, Kevin Cruzy. Welcome, Kevin.
Hey, hi, Paul. Good to be here.
Well, you know what else is good?
Tell me.
New Year's. New Year's is coming. So there's lots of partying that happens around New Year's. There's lots of capacity to say, hey, everything's brand new. But you know what else is good for New Year's? What's going to come in 2025. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, 2025 and trends in the influencer marketing world and the creator economy. So what do you got?
Okay, so I researched the topic, right? I knew we were going to talk about this today. I came with a couple of interesting things. A lot of them surprised me, actually. So kind of interesting to discuss it. The first one is, I think there is a big trend that has been going on for many, many years, and it's still going to keep going in 25, right? And I think brands need to pay attention to it because it's structurally different from what was done in the past. And so if you're not focusing on it, you might miss it. It's basically all tied to Gen Z, so people born after 98, and how they behave online.
Okay, so what makes Gen Z different specifically?
They grew up in a world where social media was ever present. It was something they were surrounded by. They communicated with their friends, family, everybody like this. It's the number one job they want to do in the future. And they all want to become creators. And as a matter of fact, and it's a number that's growing every year, but in 24, 28% of Gen Z were producing content on social media and would call themselves creators, right?
Okay.
It's almost 1 in 3.
That's insane.
That's an insane number. We're talking about tens of millions of people spread across a handful of social media that are trying to turn that into careers. And that number is 28 this year. And I can promise you, next year, it will be much closer to 33%, 1/3. And so we're going to get to a point where millions of new creators, because that's what they are, produce high-quality content with the help of, obviously, AI is coming. It will help them do things like image generation, that's obvious, but also just write a script, right? Because maybe some of these guys were limited by this, and now it's not the case anymore. So Gen Z is completely different, and the way they behave with social media is also completely different than what my generation, the millennials, used to do, right? When we got on social media, it was like, okay, first it was about posting with your family, right? I mean, we all remember like Facebook when it started out, and we just like shared posts with everybody. And afterwards, it became like following the New York Times because that's all there is there, right? And eventually it became following creators, and now that's kind of what we do. They never knew that first stage. So for them, it was always the following the creator economy, right? And so they're part of it, and they understood that as, okay, I want to do that in the future. This lifestyle looks great. Whether it is true or not is a different topic, of course. But
sure.
Yeah. But I mean, that's... And so they use social media to do stuff we don't do, right? They use social media as a search engine, for example. Like Gen Z, and I have the numbers right here, 51% of Gen Z actually prefer using TikTok to find local information than Google. So they go traveling somewhere, TikTok, not Google. They go to a restaurant, they want to see if it's good, they don't check Google Maps. They actually go on TikTok and they put the restaurant's name. That is going to affect a lot of things because that's the future customers of Google, and that's the future customers of the brands that we represent and work with, because they do a lot of advertising and a lot of work to get positioned on Google, to actually get, on Google Maps, having good reviews and stuff like this. So these customers are just not there, and they're the customers that will matter for the next 30 years. If you get them now, as we all know, all the brands are fighting for the younger generation because they represent like your future as a brand. They behave differently. So if you don't post that content on TikTok, you're missing out a lot. And I say TikTok because it's TikTok. It's not Instagram. Instagram has very good content, but a very poor search. TikTok has both a great content, so short videos, right? Not long format like YouTube. Short videos and a great search. And both YouTube and Instagram are very poor at showing you the content you're looking for when you do a search, which is really ironic because YouTube is owned by Google.
All right. So there's a lot to unpack.
Sorry about that. Yeah, Paul, I Obviously, really interested in
No,
the
no,
topic.
very, very interesting. So I think one of the pieces that's really important is, we used to have a divide between people who are analog native and digital native. And now I think the real divide is between people who are social media native versus people who aren't. So a lot of us moved to the social media world after living, in prior digital worlds or even analog worlds. But I think what you're talking about is that this generation of people is saying, how do I use all of the various tools within social media to get what I need done, right? And that's why they're doing those searches in TikTok, as you will. I'm going to tell you a funny story. As you know, I just got back from London. I was in London.
Absolutely.
And my wife has decided to be more of a Gen Z person. She is not Gen Z, but she's young at heart. And she spent multiple times looking on TikTok for what she should do, what restaurant she should go to, what museum she should go to. And we went to all those places and they were all great.
Yeah.
Because the search worked wonders, right? And there is one other piece to this, which is, yes, because everyone has been so focused on how do I, there's a whole industry for hacking Google. It's called Google SEO.
Yeah.
Right. And we all have been so interested in getting to that, making sure that our numbers look good on Google. The same thing hasn't occurred in the same way on TikTok. So weirdly, those pieces of content that you see are more interesting for what you're hoping to find.
And if I may bounce back on this is exactly what I wanted to say. So I think it's also a reaction to that social native population from like ads and all that content that is made for the purpose of influencing you by big brands and by advertisers and by, if you use Google like 15 years ago and you use it today, you can barely recognize it. Like you have to scroll down like how many, like a full page to see the first organic result, right? And I think that's Gen Z's reaction to all of this. Like, this is bullshit. We don't want to see this. What we want to see is real people that we trust tell us what they like because we trust them. And this is a trend that's been going on since, we started in this space 10 years ago, but it's also going to keep increasing in significance for the future because more and more of that content is not genuine, right? Yeah. It's a lot of ads and it's harder and harder to tell, right? Because you have now AI generated content for videos and images that's, hard to tell from a real human being sometimes.
Well, and the interesting thing about the TikTok algorithm is that it is more, or at least it feels more meritocratic than the way that Google works. In that it really does seem to be more interested in matching you to what it thinks you want rather than how it thinks you're going to make the company more money. And there is that piece with Google where you have that sense from time to time. I mean, I don't want to get in trouble with the Google people. I'm just saying, like,
the Google people,
I don't want the Google people to, come down on our results. But, when you find someone who's just making content because they're one of the 28% of people in their generation who wants to tell the world what they think, that those pieces of content are going to be more authentic than someone who's doing something for a specific goal in mind.
Yeah, and I mean, like, at the end of the day, both model work, right? But what Google is doing, and I think it's interesting, is like we talked in a couple of podcasts, like a couple of podcasts ago, we talked about like implied preferences versus express preferences, and on TikTok, the data is transparent. I know that a video has been viewed X amount of times, and I know that it received X amount of likes and shares and so on. On Google, I have no idea why this is the first results I see. So I think that transparency and also the ability as a viewer to contribute to that high score, right? If I'm on TikTok and I see a restaurant I want to go to and I go there and I love the food, I can like it. I can comment it. I say, hey, I was there. That was great. And that's going to help the algorithm recommend it to more people. So I am part of that result and I'm part of the ranking of that results on TikTok. It's not the case on Google. And I think there is really an existential question for Google. And one of my predictions for 25 is I think this is going to be a year where you see Google struggling a lot to stay relevant. The search numbers are being, affected by the rise of AI, which gives perfect answers to a lot of questions without ads or any kind of like clicks necessary. And then you have the entire Gen Z and increasingly more. And it's also like not just Gen Z, right? It's like Gen Z is 45% prefer using social searching in 24 from a Bernstein study. But if you look at millennials, it's 35%, Gen X 20%, and boomers 10%. So it's across the board. Like people just want to use social media because Google and search engines overall probably aren't as relevant as they used to be.
Well, they're also, and so I say this as someone, a dedicated Google user. I want to be very clear. I usually go to Google first, but I also feel like I speak Google, if that makes sense. I know how to write a search query into Google to find what I want. But what's really interesting about what you're seeing, especially with AI, with ChatGPT, or with TikTok, is you don't even have to know exactly how to say it. It sort of fills in the blanks for you in a way that's very interesting, and allows you to focus on the enjoyment of the content as opposed to finding the content.
So agreed. And to go back to kind of the 2025 prediction, I think there is a great opportunity for brands here. And what my prediction is, like, you're going to see the rise of creators. Like more and more creators are open for business, which is a great thing because for the longest time in the influencer marketing world, and if you wanted to get your product out there, you are basically limited by supply, right? Which gave, we all know the laws of supply and demand, right? So it's like you have very few creators that match your brand, and you have a lot of brands trying to work with these creators. Obviously, they're going to be very expensive, very difficult, and maybe not very good, right? And it might also attract bad actors that don't have real following. I think that's a great thing. We're going to keep seeing millions of new creators pop up. Like on TikTok, just so you know, last month on Upfluence, we added like 250,000 new creators on TikTok that are above 10,000 followers. So they just passed the threshold. In 1 month, and we focused mostly on Western countries, we discovered 250,000 new guys, right? And it's just in 1 month. So, and that number increases, right? Every month we add new guys, and the other guys that pass that threshold don't disappear. So it's like it's a pool of people you can actually work with that's getting larger and larger and larger, and brands are going to benefit from this one way or another. There needs to be enough brands jumping in that it compensates the supply side, right? Because there needs to be more advertisers to feed these creators to make their dreams possible. So I think there is a great opportunity for brands to seize in 25, which is like, obviously I'm preaching, to my own choir a little bit here, but I think there is just so much more opportunity, and it's easier than ever to both be a creator and be a brand that works with creators.
Right. But that also talks to, and we've talked about this, the long tail of creators, right? Those smaller creators, when that world gets big enough, then you can find the people who already love your brand, who want to actually create content for you. So it creates a lot more of those more organic opportunities, less of the, hey, I'll give you, $10,000 if you shout me out on Twitter. Like that's the way that a lot of people
we see brands
still
kind
think
of like
about this.
We see brands building the funnels to acquire these creators and give them entry points into their systems. Like we see a lot of brands now have a link on Instagram to an ambassador recruitment page or an applications tracking system for creators. And that's great. I think that's something brands need to do, and it's becoming absolutely necessary because the issue of having a very large pool of creators is that you cannot possibly manually do this at scale. And if you don't do it at scale, you're going to leave money on the table because you won't work with enough people, or you will not be able to work with all the guys that could potentially bring business to your brand. So you got to decide. So building that funnel, just the same way we spent a decade or 2 decades building marketing funnels and landing pages and all the stuff we know, and the Salesforce and the CRMs and so on. The same thing is happening with creators, and with a lot of companies at the core of that transformation, which is like one of them is ours, but you also have a lot of other players out there that do exactly the same thing or close to it. So I think that's a great opportunity, but they need to seize it one way or another. Not to do self-plugs here, but I really believe in like great productivity tools for this, whether it could even be like a smart spreadsheet, for example, but like, at least like I think there is really a need for something.
That's a huge piece of what's going on. And if you're really looking to drive actual results, it's a key piece. And we are seeing, and another thing that we want to talk about for 2025 is the rise of not only sales driven through social media, but actual social commerce. And how those numbers are going up.
Yeah, you're right on, Paul. I mean, like people probably heard at this point about like TikTok Shop or Instagram shopping. YouTube has the same kind of features too in social media. What I find like staggering is like basically last year they launched everything, and my prediction was that it wouldn't necessarily work very well, just because adoption is super hard and the infrastructure to connect to the back end, know your inventory, ship the products, and so on. It's pretty tricky. And I think I was very right when it comes to Instagram, because it didn't work out at all. I mean, like compared to the size of Instagram and that position in the US economy, it should have been a home run. And I think it was difficult to do for Instagram just because they're such a big company and they are a little scared of change. Last time they made a big update on Instagram, there was such a big backlash. Every time they seem to change anything, people complain about it, right? When they move more like to Reels from posts, like they just had an issue with this, users. So the one thing I'm going to share today, and I would say it's like not circumstantial, but it's anecdotal, but it's super relevant. So TikTok Shop in October 2023, so we're recording this, it's early November of 2024. So about a year ago, TikTok Shop represented 0.16% of all the orders shipped by Ship Hero, which is one of the main kind of shipping, like startup-y delivery guys. So they actually help you like...
That's a technical term.
Sorry.
Yeah. Startup delivery guys?
I'm not super familiar with the industry, but basically they help you...
They handle the logistics.
Yeah,
of
they build the pipeline
shipping.
to handle your entire logistics, so they can track your packages and your inventory and stuff like this. And as of September 2024, so 2 months ago, the percentage of TikTok Shop related orders was 5.5%. So 1 in 20, more than 1 in 20 orders that they shipped was from TikTok Shop. And for 2025, I can tell you this is going to explode. I think they're predicting $604 billion of market size by 2027. I can tell you this number is way too small.
And as you look at that, right, and you mentioned this, TikTok passed Instagram on this in terms of at least the zeitgeist, at least the way that people are thinking about it. And I think it's personally because I think Instagram is still fundamentally an ads company and wants to sell ad inventory and was worried about, the shopping and the ads don't go quite as well together. Whereas TikTok, I don't think has the ad revenue in the same way.
100%. So, and it also makes it a lot easier to make radical changes when you're the new guy, right? Because you're not tied to all these advertisers that need all the placements and so on. And so that's one thing. But the second thing is also like, it's been honestly incredibly impressive to see how fast TikTok has been able to make changes, right? They have done a creator marketplace that works better than Instagram's. They have done a search that works better than YouTube and Instagram. They have changed the way we consume content, the algorithms to drive, and as we both know as TikTok users, the algorithm that recommends content is incredibly strong and powerful, and maybe too powerful. The number one reason I know people stop using TikTok is because it's too good, right? It's like it's too addictive.
You're just watching and it's 2 hours later and you don't know what happened.
And now they're becoming a powerhouse of social commerce, and they just announced their partnership with Amazon. So now, and I think it's so interesting, right? Because now they're going to work with Amazon, the same company they banned the links from. So last year and for the entire year 2023 and 24, there was no Amazon links on TikTok. That was forbidden. And now look at this. Now you can buy with Prime straight from TikTok, and it goes from the Amazon warehouse and it ships straight to your home, and TikTok gets a cut. I mean, that's insane. And I think that the power of TikTok and Amazon combined, so TikTok was already integrated with Shopify. That's a minimum because this is giving them access to inventory, to like basically the entire back office of an e-commerce company. Instagram did the same thing. And I can guarantee you next year, Instagram is going to have to follow this. They're going to have to go to Amazon and see if they can actually buy with Prime too, which means now you have 3 of the biggest tech companies in the world, basically leveraging their strength because they realize they're stronger together than separate, right? That's gonna that $604 billion of sales annually in social commerce is gonna be blown out of the water maybe in a couple of years.
I'm just curious what's going to happen, because we're heading into holiday season right now.
Yeah.
I'm curious what those numbers are going to look like once we hit Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and all through to the end of December.
We'll do an episode from the Upfronts data that we can share.
But I would not be surprised to see
so
those numbers explode, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We were looking at the generational breakdown of the U.S., and right now Gen Z makes up 20% of the population in general, right? Which is insane. It's a huge number, and they are right now going to be buying a good deal of their holiday presents on all of these shops.
And think that they're not at the peak of their purchasing power, right? Their purchasing
like
power is going to peak in
10 years.
5 to 15 years, right? It's going to peak, right? So you still have many, many, many years of growth just if the habits don't change, because your population is going to get better. So that's one thing I really want to talk about, like Gen Z, how they search, how they find content. Brands need to position themselves as the same efforts they do on Google. Having a dedicated person doing SEO, agencies doing SEOs, they need to have like short content on TikTok. They need to have short content on YouTube. They need to have short content on Instagram so that they are findable by all these guys doing like very basic search. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the rise of social commerce, right? With the TikTok and how important that's going to be. And now that it's integrated with Amazon, anybody that sells on Amazon needs to look at it. Anybody that sells online needs to look at it. And I think it's inevitable. It's going to be a big, big thing. And we all need to get ready for an explosion of growth.
We can't talk about 2025 without talking about the biggest elephant in the room. And that's AI, generative AI, however you want to think about it. You all know what AI is, but I want to talk about what we see AI going and growing into in 2025.
So yeah, we can talk about AI. So I think everybody knew that AI would be a major component of everything basically in 2024. I don't think people realize how quickly, and me first, how quickly it would take over everything. And I'm saying this because for the world of social media, and we're talking about the trends of social media for 25, we see a lot of things changing very, very fast. I think there are many subtopics inside AI. It's a major societal change. And it's not clear how long it's going to keep growing and evolving and getting better, right? And we're at the point where you have images and videos that are completely indistinguishable from like real stuff that you and I would take in the street, right?
I would say we're still in, thankfully, a little bit of the uncanny valley where some of what we're seeing you can see, and like thankfully like the deep fakes still look a little fake. But I don't know how much longer.
Like I think deepfakes is like about adding a layer on top of like an existing piece of content. We're talking about completely 100%
if you're talking about generated
content.
synthetic content. I mean, I do think, and this is, who knows, this could also be a little bit of wishful thinking for me. But I do think there is a way that those images tend to look, which tends to be very,
for now, it's
specifically
true.
AI.
Yeah.
Right?
Some of it is true, but you have some models like Flux, like Llama, like doing really, really strong like content and very hard, like photorealistic content. Okay, so to go back on topic.
Let's get back to the topic.
A couple of different subcategories here. One of them I think is completely overblown, is not going to happen overnight, right? So there has been a lot of press about like what they call artificial creators or influencers, right? I call them synthetic influencers. It's the same thing. You generate an account on Instagram or on TikTok, mostly Instagram because pictures are easier to generate. And then you make a lot of like AI content, like images, photos of a virtual person that doesn't exist. And you get followers that way. So you have like very, very large accounts. People refer to this all the time and they talk to me about this all the time. My answer is always the same. They're like, oh, but they have millions of followers. It's great. It's the future. And I'm like, okay, let's look at any profile. Upfronts can get you data on them. So I looked at Magazine Louisa, who has 7 million followers. It's fully AI-driven and AI-generated content. You look at everything, it looks great, right? It's like, okay, 7 million followers, fast growth, blah, blah, blah. And the engagement rate is 0.02%. People don't care, okay? And it's the same for a lot of different things. I think you see, like, I believe in these content to give life to imaginary characters. Bobby they have an Instagram account, and they have done a bunch of AI content, which I think is really smart because it brings to life the Bobby story. And I really believe in that kind of like virtual influencer in that form. But they already have an existing kind of like
there's already a
basis in
history
reality, right?
and a sense of character.
So I think for that, we're safe for now. And I don't think it's going to be a major type of content we're going to see next year. And we might see a lot of virtual influencers, a lot of fake ones that are indistinguishable from humans is more likely than to have actually AI people, because people look for authenticity online, right? We just talked about this, right? With Gen Z looking for like stuff they can trust. You definitely can't trust an AI account, right? So that's why the engagement rates are so low, and that's why kind of overall, I think the use cases of these accounts is going to be super limited, and it's going to be pretty niche. That's my prediction. Now, it does not mean you're not going to see a lot of AI content. I was actually very surprised recently. A couple of weeks ago, Zuckerberg actually said that the same way creators are a form of content that they have on Facebook and Instagram, and your family is another form of content, like your people you're close to, and news is another form of content. He sees AI as another form of content that's going to be all over Meta and Instagram and Facebook. And I will be honest, I'm really confused at this because I felt like they would be at war with AI content just because of the risk of it all, right? The fact that you just might lose interest from customers because they can't trust anything on your platform anymore.
To me, I see that more as them. There's always been a place for people creating digests of other types of content, aggregation of other types of content, and that's something that AI is very good at. So I think that the play there might be that, this is a way to have a synthesized form of content that is based on a lot of other content. And I could see that Facebook could find that interesting because sometimes people want the TLDR version of something. They don't want to read a full article. Maybe they just want a short summary.
You're right. And for that, Paul, I mean, I agree with you. But I think if you go on Facebook these days, you see a lot of posts that are completely made up and are made to look realistic and are made to catch people unaware. So they don't expect to see AI-generated content and believe what they see, right? Obviously, this is, when we publish this, we'll know what happened to the US and the elections. But this is an election time, so real content, very, very important in the US right now.
I do think that's also another piece where all of the social media networks are being very careful before the election, supposedly with a lot of their AI tools.
And the AI companies too, right?
Yeah.
OpenAI implied that, they didn't say it officially, but they implied that they wouldn't release their video generation tool before the end of the election, right? So they have a tool called Sora, OpenAI. It looks pretty groundbreaking, like revolutionary, and they said they wouldn't release it until the end of the election, but probably they will need more time after that. It's a very complex and powerful tool. So yes, very important. I'm just surprised, and I'm really curious to see what kind of stance these companies take on AI generated content. Will they tag it? Will they flag it? I don't know. I can tell you this is not going to stop. You're going to see a lot more of it in 2025. It's going to be everywhere. It's going to be video. It's going to be post. It's going to be audio. It's going to be text. It's going to be comments replied in your feed. It's you are in a world where social media, if they want to, can fake interactions, right? For the longest time, like generating users, UGC, user-generated content, but also just having real users in the background was the biggest hurdle, right? You couldn't fake it if you didn't have it. Now you can fake it. And it's like you can totally fake users. Now, I wouldn't put it past like social networks like X, formerly Twitter, to actually do this. And I wouldn't be surprised if they already did it, actually. So I do believe that this is one of the things like, and there is a big risk here, which is like to lose faith and trust into everything you see on social media. And I think that will add a premium on real human beings that are making real content that is definitely human being related.
Well, the other pieces. So yes, authenticity and all right. So we've talked about sort of the dangers of AI, the danger of trust and the danger of sort of having those pieces of content that don't perform. What are the ways that you see brands being able to leverage AI, especially in the creator economy, for the good?
So First of all, like making content has never been easier. Like think about so I've seen a couple of really, really super cool companies. One of them is like they basically take any content that a creator made for your brand. So let's say they say, hey, I'm gonna promote that beauty product, right? So like makeup, something. And they say something in the video, right? So that the face is moving, their lips are moving, the sound coming out of their mouth is like saying something. That AI takes that content and it allows you to just edit the text, and it will make the lips move and the sound change with a synthetic voice of the creator. So it's the same voice that you can replicate and change. And the beauty of this is it will help you as a brand get content from creators, and with their agreement, you can edit their content. So you can actually basically like do A/B test, multivariate. Like you can have them say something else. And I understand.
Can we start with a less dystopic idea? Like how about because there are the really great AI companies that are out there to help deal with the Tower of Babel problem, right?
Yeah,
we are 8
the
billion
language
people.
barrier is like
We have 8 billion people across the planet. If you have really great content and it's in English, wouldn't it be lovely to have that same content be able to work in Mandarin, be able to work in Hindi, be able to work in French?
And this is happening already. YouTube already introduced last year or the year before the multi-language tracks, and now content will have multi-language dubs, like in movies. Except they will look a lot more natural if they're done with AI, because they can make your lips move, they can use your own voice, and so on and so on. So all of that is 100% true. Big opportunity for brands to just reach out to more targets. Making content is way easier. You can translate in many languages. You're completely right, Paul. The one thing that I think brands, and we don't see a lot of right now, but it will be very, very big. And I think for Instagram and YouTube and TikTok, one of the big issues for brands doing advertising on there, right, whether it's with creators or not, is to produce the content, right? To get a really good video going, to get like people talking about your product and so on. So I think AI will making that video content, making that image way more like practical.
That makes sense.
And I think you'll be able to test way better. You'll be able to have like Apple levels of like, video content for like the cost of a coffee, basically. So I'm really enthusiastic about this for brands. I think it's going to open a lot of possibilities. But as you know, whenever like new things are possible, slowly your audience gets used to it and builds kind of an immune system to your content, right? So I think we're going to go back to, my prediction is that we're going to go back to, okay, we're producing amazing content. People love it, right? In the adoption curve. Oh, wow, look at all these great videos and so on. And then you go down to like, oh, but it's all fake. It's all AI generated. And you're going back to, hey, real human beings telling me real stuff. That's what I need.
Yeah. And it's sort of the same, it's the same cycle that happens. We see it in music all the time, where you have these revolutions where people get back to, I just want to hear what one person sounds like playing guitar, and I want it to sound terrible. And then it gets produced and produced and produced and produced. And then you have auto-tune and all of this synthetic stuff. And then someone comes out and they're just like, I'm just a guy in a garage with my friends. And then people are like, yes, that's what I want. It cycles through those kind of extremes.
Innovation is exceptional until it becomes completely normal. And at this point, like, I think brands need to like be quick, because I don't think it's going to last forever.
Yeah, and that is one thing that AI does help with significantly is, I've been seeing a lot of people talking about AI, and yes, there is a world where AI replaces people eventually. But where it's doing right now is it's making the people who are using it way more efficient. And it's helping them generate more scripts and more plans and all of those types of things. So that's another piece to being quick.
It's a way broader conversation than just kind of like social media AI, but I don't think we're near, like, I think everybody has assistants now. So it's great. Everybody's a manager. Congratulations.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that AI is going to replace entire teams of people that were doing like job that needs to be managed or handled or completed. They're still pretty far from this, like couple, at least 5 years, I would say, but who knows?
Okay. So, the world of doing social media, running the creator economy has grown significantly. So now the person who's in charge of doing this, we've just defined that they need to be able to think like they're Gen Z, be able to find things like Gen Z people. They need to understand social commerce, and they need to be proficient with AI. All three of those things in order to build a successful team doing that. How do you find the person or the team that can do that right now? Because that's what you need to be able to do.
I think if you need somebody that speaks to Gen Z, you need to hire Gen Z. And I think, the same way probably your first engineers or people that built a website were probably millennials because they were like internet natives. I think the same thing is true, right? So go for the younger generation, come humble. They will work differently maybe than what you're used to. They will behave differently. They will speak differently and everything. And I don't want to be an old guy here, but I think it's just like a lot of brands are a little allergic to change. And I think in that case, they just need to be a little more open about it. But it's going to be multiple people more likely.
Yeah, I think the needs of the role and the needs of what people need to have in order to be successful have changed and have grown. And you need people that really are really pretty phenomenal at what they do.
But we're looking at another very interesting year in 2025, for sure. Like it's going to be a lot of changes and it's going to be very, very quick.
Well, I want to thank you all for listening today. And Kevin, thank you for joining me to talk through 2025. And we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ready, Set, Click podcast. Love this episode? Hit the subscribe button, give us a like, or leave a review. Until next time.